Today I'm going to talk to you guys about how we have foresight in regards to rigging. Just a quick rundown for the rest of the team. I'm sure there are some riggers in here. So just to kind of talk about me for a second. As Barry said, I used to work at the indie studio in Puny Astronaut as the character artist. I've worked in the industry for over 7 years now, and there, as an indie studio, my skill set grew and changed to be whatever it needed to be over the years. Quite early on though, I developed quite early on, I developed a real interest in rigging. So now I'm really chuffed to say that I'm a full rigger at Frontier for almost 2 years. For the past 8 months though, I've been on mat leave. I'm due to go back in just under a month, so this has been a really fun way for me to kind of mentally brush the dust off. Technically this is the only rig I've worked on. But what is rigging, for those of you who may be asking? Well, building rigs. For the super simple explanation I tell my family, it's turning things into puppets in 3D. My love of the discipline comes from the problem solving. Every mesh that needs rigged is slightly different. And to oversimplify things again, they're all just their own little puzzles that need solved. I also get to quickly see how my work affects others, so there's a sense of instant gratification too. And then on top of that, many of the tasks require a touch of creativity, so it's rare two riggers will do things exactly the same. It's just a win-win-win for me. We're 6 slides in, and I reckon you'll be able to tell that I'm not kidding when I say I really enjoy rigging. But what that does mean is I can't really remember what isn't common knowledge. So I'm going to roll things back for you guys and lay the foundations. To start, I'll quickly run through some terminology. Here's a little list so you can brace yourselves. Don't worry, there's no quiz at the end. First, we'll kind of go with the core things that make up a rig. So we have your skeleton. This is a hierarchy of points in the scene that store the transformation data. Technically, this is actually what gets animated and not the model. Then we have the controls. Think of this like the UI for the animators. This should provide a more intuitive and manageable way to interact with the skeleton rather than working directly onto the bones. Please don't work directly onto the bones. They should also allow for animators to make much more complex movements more easily. And then we have the skeleton. Just for a second. I do love skating. I don't know what it says about me, but I do. This is the data that connects the skeleton to your mesh. It works by associating the values to vertices that indicate how much influence each bone has over those points on the mesh. Now for slightly more situation-specific stuff, I say it as I'm talking about the bind pose, which every single rig mesh should have. So bind pose is the pose the skeleton is in when the pose that the mesh is in when the skeleton is bound to it. I got there. So typically this is the state the model is in when it gets handed over from the 3D artist. It should be in a neutral pose to allow for the most flexibility without too much deformation. Then we have IKFK. IK or inverse kinematics is when the child controls the parents, and forward kinematics is when the parent controls the child. Then we have blend shapes. Remember how I said that it's the skeleton that actually gets animated and not the mesh? Well, sometimes you can animate mesh. This is useful for extremely specific and complex shapes that might alternatively take a lot of joints to get right, or in combination with joints to compensate for volume changes. To explain the images that I have here, my favourite example that I've worked with was a pufferfish. With the blend shapes, I was able to get smooth deformation and movement with only 5 bones. If I tried to produce the exact same effect with joints alone, however, it could easily have taken double. That's a good thing. Edge flow. Edge flow refers to the modelling practice of ensuring edges follow the curvature and features of the model. This is extremely important in making sure that things deform properly. You can see from the examples on screen, the features of the face, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, all have concentric circles flowing out from them. And this allows the skin to, allows us to skin mesh in a predictable way. I have practiced this presentation, I promise. So, hopefully that all helps you follow the next few slides along a little bit easier. Don't worry though, as I said, there's no quiz at the end. For you guys, anyway, I don't know how many questions there will be. I'll go over my process now very, very quickly. Pre-reg. The first thing I like to do when I get a model is find out what is expected of it. I'll talk to the artists and the designers responsible for the mesh and see what they've envisioned. I may also chat with the animators about what they imagine and what when they look at the mesh, see if there's any fun extras that they might come up with that I could add in. Some questions that I ask could include how complex will it be? Is it organic or mechanic? It might not be obvious from looking at it straight away. Are there any additional points required for snapping other things to it, say for example VFX or other meshes? Then I'll have a look at the actual model itself and see what I reckon it's capable of, because those two, what is needed and what's capable of, are probably not one and the same. Is it all the one mesh? If it is, should it be? Does the bind pose make sense? Does the topology and edge flow look okay? And then, unless there's any major concerns, I'll provide my feedback to the 3D artists, if necessary, and make a start on building the skeleton while any fixes are being done. This is my attention check, so don't worry about this bit really, but I'll go over it quickly. During the reg, it's fairly straightforward. After the skeleton is done, the controls get made, and then the skin is applied. Once the skin is applied, I like to push the reg to its extremes so that I can smooth out any influences. And then once I'm happy with it, I pass it along to the animator. Now, I just mentioned working on extremes. Animators don't typically work with the extremes of a mesh. Yeah. So there will most likely be skin tweaks that suggest favouring maintaining volume over flexibility. Animators may additionally request extra tools and constraints, and some may be a little bit too complex to add retroactively, but I'll do my best. Yeah, so now you have a mild understanding of my process. But I'm not really here to tell you how to do my job, just that knowing a little bit might help both of us. But like many roles in our industry, if rigging is invisible if done well. So to give you an idea of the impact our work has, here are a few visual errors that I've found recently where I believe that rigging is to blame. The way the character's chest collapses on the left is most likely due to the arm having too much influence over it. And the sharp twist in the wrist on the right is something known as the Sweetie Wrapper effect, where there is a notable loss in volume. There's also the question of who's responsible for rigs when it's not someone's specific job. I'm fairly certain there's not many indie companies out there with a designated rigger. So who does it fall on? Is it the modelers? Is it the animators? Maybe you're even lucky enough to have a tech artist on your team, but is it their job? The point is, you never know, and if a game has animated models, then someone needs to rig them. It doesn't hurt to have a basic understanding. You may have also noticed when I was going over my job, a good portion of it is double checking things and going back and forth with other disciplines. So in theory, having a better understanding of what I do and how rigging works will help you work in an ultimately more timely fashion, and it would save us all time. And what producer doesn't want to hear that? But let's get into some slightly more specific examples. 3D artists, seeing how good modelling practices like edge flow and polygon density affect deformation could help you, it could be good for you to see. That's fine, next slide. Understand what a pose is. A lot of rigging talk kind of focuses on bipedal characters, but if there a lot of rigging talk focuses on bipedal characters, but when a flower is rigged, what is the neutral pose? When a dog is rigged, what is the neutral pose? So it's a good reason to understand rigging so that you can have an idea of movement, texture deformation, all that stuff. It's really good to have a diverse range of characters in your game. And a lot of the time, we might use multiple meshes on a singular rig. Now, to get more variance through our different characters, you might decide that the eyes need to move slightly to make it look a little bit different. But if you move the eyes slightly, then once it's applied to that rig, those eyes are going to rotate out of the head. Animators. Knowing how rigging, understanding a little bit more about rigging could help you identify rig issues sooner. And once you've identified those rig issues, please avoid them and bring them to us rather than trying to work around them, because eventually things will get fixed and then that just causes counter animation issues and it ends up being double the work for both of us, so it just ends up being a lose-lose situation. And then understanding a bit more about rigging might help you spot areas where we could help you improve your workflow. Maybe an IK chain on the tongue, or an offset control that allows the character to spin on their head. And just as a side note, a lot of my best work and the things that I'm most proud of just came from suggestions that animators have had, so it's not too much to ask. And when it comes towards the end of a project when bugs need fixed, I know that I've been in a situation where rig issues have been filtered under animators' jobs or character artists' jobs because nobody's really sure what's going on, and things end up slipping through the cracks. So if everybody has a little bit of an understanding of what's going on with the rigs, then maybe we can fix it sooner, because we do want to fix it. The one instance that sticks out in my mind of someone not understanding the ins and outs of my role involved the simple act of taking off a hat. To save time, the hatted character was initially built upon a previous rig. The previous rig did not have a hat. So there was no hat joint in the skeleton. There was also, therefore, no mesh underneath the hat. Adding the new geometry meant tweaking the UV maps, which broke the skin weights, and then adding the new joint confused the hierarchy, which meant the whole new set of animations had to be made. It was just a total avalanche of issues, and it wouldn't have happened if someone had told us from the start that they needed to take off their hat. So, hopefully I've somewhat demystified my discipline. I think to summarise all of this, I'd like to say that if you think you shouldn't mention something because it's just too simple, please do, it may not be. But alternatively, if you don't want to mention something because you think it may be too complex, please do, it may not be. At the end of the day, communication is key. There's so many programs and resources out there to get you started with rigging. Blender, Unreal, free, great. And if you drop me a message on LinkedIn, I'll be happy to send along more. Yeah. Now it's time for my quiz. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh no.
I've seen for characters, especially more cartoony characters, like something like that Digital Circus animated show, they often have very excessively complex rigs because you have to be able to bend the character in like 500 different ways. What does that tend to look like? Is that just like a very complex skeleton, or is that just a lot of controls? Or like, what would you do?
Usually they'll try and keep the skeleton, but the base skeleton will be fairly simple, I imagine, and it'll be a lot of controls. Sometimes in instances like that, where say for example you have a squiggly arm or something, they can almost like add additional joints. Like I talked about IKFK chains, see there that like that's simple. Like an IKFK chain would actually technically have 3 legs going on. So you've got your inverse leg, your forward leg, and then the leg that actually gets exported to stuff. I don't know if that answers the question. There's a lot of controls going on. That's probably the best way to put that.
Any other questions?
How did you end up as a rigger? Was it something you wanted to do for the game, or was it more fuck if they were hiring that?
No, it was just starting out working in an indie studio, and like I said, if there's animated models, someone needs to rig them. I picked up rigging them. I got really, really into it. Like, I don't know, it's when there's weird stuff, like not just bipedal things. Like some of my favourite rigs, pufferfish, like flowers and vines, and you can get gears, and it's really cool to be able to. I don't know. It almost feels like slightly redundant when you hand an animator like a really cool complex door with loads of gears and cogs and things like that, and the door opens and all the cogs turn to make it look powerful, but all the animator has done is like rotate it slightly, and then the riggers kind of set up the rest. But it feels good. It's really satisfying.
You mentioned you like weight painting. Why?
No, of course. Because it's quite sadistic, isn't it? It's just really soothing. I don't know. Just like, you're right, I should talk to someone about that. It's seeing it. It's that sort of last step when you start to see like the fingers all bend properly, or the cheek pinch and the nose move, and you start to see the rig look how other people would understand it and how it's going to be in game.
I've got a follow-up then.
Cool.
Would you prefer a black and white gradient or the whole full colour spectrum?
Give me the full colour spectrum, absolutely, yeah.
The whole party then.
I don't know, the black and white is...
Do you have any pet peeves when you get given 3D measures?
This is dangerous.
As an artist, I want to do better.
I think the one that jumps to my mind is armpits, weirdly enough, because like, say we have an A pose, and then you've done the texture and the normals and all that stuff. That's a really, really easy area for all that stuff to get clipped. So as soon as the character raises up their arms, it's like, what's going on in there? Also, I'm really nervous, so I'm trying not to raise my arm too much.
That's the last question.
Would you say that rigging is quite an in-demand skill in the industry at the moment?
I've been off on that, did I mention that? Yeah, definitely. Like it's on the tech side, and there seems to always be a kind of growing demand for tech sided stuff. I don't want to get into like things being auto generated and all that kind of stuff, but auto generation isn't quite there yet with rigs, I don't think.
All right, cool. We got a round of applause, guys.